comets indicate the solar system is less than 10,000 years old. And this one atheist went home and devoted an entire website to me, an anti-Hovind website. There are now over 400 anti-Hovind websites. I'm so proud of myself. Hey, the Bible says we're supposed to be the salt of the earth. Salt irritates. If you're not irritating somebody, you're not doing it right, folks, okay? I offer to debate all those guys any day with half my brain tied behind my back, just to make it fair. They don't want to do that, though. They all want to get me into an email debate. I say, fellas, I type 12 words a minute with 19 mistakes. I get 1,000 email a week. I'm not about to get into an email debate with anybody. Okay, I can barely got enough time to sleep and eat. It's a busy life around my place. But if you want to debate me publicly, anytime, anywhere, all of you together, if you got an anti-Hovind website, put up or shut up, you just pick your spot. I'll take them all on, in Christian love, of course. But this guy on his website said, Hovind, don't you know the reason we have new comets, we have comets still, is because new ones are coming in from the Oort cloud. That's their answer to why we still have comets. He said in the 1950s, a Dutch astronomer named Jan Oort proposed, that means he hoped, he wished, he prayed, that there was a great shell of comets out there, putting new ones in all the time. He said this Oort cloud is 50,000 astronomical units away. Well, in case you don't know, an astronomical unit is the distance from the sun to the earth. That is called 1 astronomical unit. It's real hard to see Pluto without an incredibly good telescope, and Pluto is 39.44 astronomical units away. You certainly cannot see a comet that is 50,000 astronomical units away. See, actually, nobody's ever seen the Oort cloud. Oort never saw the Oort cloud. The whole thing is based on a mathematical mistake. There is no Oort cloud. But this scoffer said, if you want to use the comet argument, it's up to you to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the Oort cloud and other sources don't exist. Now, slow down a minute, Dave. How do you prove the non-existence of anything? What he's trying to do here is called shifting the burden of proof. The liberals are really good at doing this on us, folks. It's so easy to shift the burden of proof. I'll show you how easy it is. Watch this. Suppose I said, watermelons are blue on the inside until you cut the skin. Prove I'm wrong. If all I have to do is make up a story and you got to prove it's wrong, I can keep you busy the rest of your life, can't I? And if all they got to do is make up a story about an Oort cloud and I got to prove it doesn't exist, I mean, come on, that's not how science works. You got to prove it does exist. What we know is we do have comets. We know they don't last long. We know the Bible says 6,000 years. I don't have a problem with the comets. But he's trying to make it look like I've got a problem with the comets. No, no, Dave, you got the problem with the comets. I don't have a problem at all. They fit fine with my theory. The Bible says the heavens declare the glory of God. Evolution theory has the sun and stars coming before the earth. The Bible has the earth coming before the sun and stars. Did you know absolutely everything about the evolution theory is backwards? I have Christians all the time say, don't you think God could have used evolution? I say, well, first, that's not what the Bible says. Second, you got a retarded God who can't do it right first time. He's got to practice. Thirdly, your God's cruel and ruthless, uses suffering, misfits, and death. You got a different God than I do. I'm sorry, okay? No, God did not use evolution to get us here. We cover a whole lot more on that on video number 7 about the theistic evolution disposition. Everything's backwards. You know, the Bible has the earth before the sun. Evolution has sun before the earth. The Bible has oceans before land. Evolution has land before oceans. We can go on all day about the differences between these two theories. They are not compatible. Don't pretend that they are. They're not. They're incompatible. They're opposites. The psalmist said, when I consider thy heavens. Hey, kids, he says when, not if. You do yourself a favor to shut off that TV once in a while and go out and consider the heavens. Parents, if your kid likes laying in the yard looking at the clouds or looking at the stars, just leave him alone. Unless he's got some homework to do. Maybe that's the reason, you know. But it's good to take time to consider what God has made. The psalmist said, while I was musing, the fire burned. The word muse means to think. Think. English is a very cool language. But you know, a theist is a person who believes in God. If you put the letter A in front of that word, it means the opposite of. So an atheist is a person who does not believe in God. Muse means to think. Amuse means to not think. That's what the word literally means, to not think. They've got entire parks around this country where you can pay money and go do that. Have you ever heard of them before? They're called amusement parks. A place to not think, yes. He said, when I consider thy heavens. the work of thy fingers, the moon, the stars which thou hast ordained? What is man that thou art mindful of him? You know, a person that spends his time considering what God has done is not impressed with what man can do. And some of you parents ought to go home and look in your kid's bedroom, and if what you see plastered all over the wall are pictures of sports heroes, think about it carefully. Your kids are being trained to meditate on what man can do. Whoa, he threw the ball through the hoop. Oh, did you see that? Oh, who's going to care in 1,000 years? Who's going to care in 20 years? Does anybody know who won the Super Bowl 10 years ago? Does anybody care? It doesn't matter. All those grown men out there fighting over that one ball, they can all afford to go buy their own. We get all excited over dumb stuff. Who's going to care in 1,000 years? It's been estimated there's enough stars that everybody on earth can own 2 trillion of them to yourself. Go spend some time looking at them. We could talk a long time about the stars. We'll cover more on that on video number 7, about the stars. How do we see the light, billions of light years away? Yeah, we got a long answer on that in video 7. The Bible says, speak to the earth and it shall teach thee. Did you know the earth is like a big magnet? Now, magnets always lose their strength. The earth's magnet has lost 6% of its strength in the last 150 years. The magnet is getting weaker, which means it used to be stronger, which means the earth can't be more than 25,000 years old, because the heat generated from the stronger magnetic field would have destroyed life on earth. That also means carbon dating doesn't work. We'll cover lots more on carbon dating in question answer time video 7. Here's an example though. The lower leg of a mammoth carbon dated 15,000 years old. The skin was 21,000 years old. Talk about a slow birth. One part of a mammoth was 29,000 years old, another part's 44,000. It just doesn't work, folks. We cover lots more on that on video 7. The textbooks will say, well, yes, the magnetic field's getting weaker because it's part of a pattern of reversals. The magnetic field is reversing. This is pure baloney. The magnetic field of the earth is not reversing. There are stronger and weaker magnetism areas, but not reversed. Follow video 6 for that, but that's all part of a theory called Pangea. How many have ever heard of Pangea? They'll say, yes, boys and girls, millions of years ago, all the continents used to fit together. Oh, really? They don't tell the kids they shrank Africa nearly 40% to make them fit. They also don't tell them they took out all of Mexico and Central America. Hey, señor, ¿qué pasa? ¿Dónde está Mexico? Panama, Costa Rica, Guatemala. They also don't tell them what I think ought to be obvious to a kindergartner. If you take the water out of the oceans, you will notice there is dirt underneath. People say, hey, Hovind, do you think the continents were ever connected? I say, what are you talking about? They still are. What do you mean, were they? Hello, it's not hollow under the oceans, you know. They're still connected. Yeah, it's just the low places are full of water, that's all. What a dumb theory. We cover more on that on video 6. I think the continents are moving some, no question. Okay, I like Walt Brown's hydroplate theory myself. I think that explains the whole thing. We cover that more on video 6. Sahara Desert has what's called a prevailing wind pattern. The wind almost always blows the same direction. This creates a problem. The hot air coming off the desert kills the trees next door, and that area becomes desert. And once that soil gets sterilized, it's real hard to bring it back. The process is called desertification. They did quite a study on Sahara because they know it's growing about 4 miles a year today. After studying Sahara for a long time, they said, we think that desert's about 4,000 years old. That's pretty old. But I have a question. If the earth is millions of years old, why don't we have a bigger desert someplace? Why is the biggest desert in the world less than 4,000 years old? Well, I have a theory about that desert. Now here's my theory. I believe about 6,000 years ago, God made everything. 4,400 years ago, there was a flood. And it's pretty hard to have a desert under a flood. So the desert couldn't start growing until the flood water went down. Psalm 104, the mountains arose, the valleys sank down, the water rushed off. And so I predict, based on the Bible, the biggest desert in the world will be less than 4,400 years old. It is. Wow. Maybe the Bible's right. Did you know when they drill into the ground, sometimes they hit oil? The oil often is under incredible pressure, up to 20,000 pounds per square inch. It'll come squirting up out of the ground, poof, like a big zip. 20,000 psi. The guys who study the rocks on top of the oil say the pressure of the oil is greater than the weight of overbearing rock, which really creates a problem. It should have cracked the rock in less than 10,000 years. Okay, well then I have a question. If the earth is millions of years old, why is the oil pressure down there still? And where'd the oil come from anyway? Well, nearly all scientists agree that oil comes from organisms that are squished. They're changed by heat and pressure into oil. Years ago, they learned how to make a barrel of oil in 20 minutes in the laboratory from a ton of garbage. They learned that 30 years ago. In Australia, they're taking sewage sludge and changing it to oil in 30 minutes. Sinclair has the dinosaur as their logo. They say the dinosaur has turned to oil. Yes, boys and girls, it mellowed for 80 million years. I don't think so. I have a theory about the oil. Now, here's my theory. I believe about 6,000 years ago, God made everything. 4,400 years ago, there was a flood. Now, in that flood, lots of critters and people drowned. They got buried by the gravel and the rocks and the mud and the sand. It got pretty heavy on top, and it squished them into oil. So the oil's down.